So, what if two people, me and another friend of mine in this situation, sat down and decided to redo the entire Treaty of Versailles? And not in your typical fashion where you role play as the nation and then you go and you act like the nation and you negotiate with the other nations, but just act as if we were the only two leaders and we had to remake/redo the entire Treaty of Versailles to our liking. Well, one day we randomly thought we'd do just that. We just sat down and we started discussing what a alternate Treaty of Versailles would look like according to both of us. And we decided to go in a sort of circle formation, first starting off with the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, then going to the Treaty of Sèvres, then going to the Treaty of Trianon, then the Treaty of Saint-Germain, and then finally ending with Germany and France in the east. We actually managed to finish the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk relatively fast, as I proposed that we give Germany almost all of Eastern Europe, basically the lands they had conquered, with the only changes being that we give most of the Caucasus, besides Armenia, to the Russians or the Soviets, and then we make Finland an independent nation out of German sphere of influence. Not only that, but my friend also suggested that we move the border between Finland and the Soviets a little bit, that we tweak it a bit, because of the fact that the Finns were way too close to St. Petersburg and that might cause a winter war to happen. So we did just that and we slightly changed the border. We moved part of the border that was nearest to St. Petersburg up all the way to the Mannerheim line, and then in return as compensation we gave Finland some lands in Karelia. Brest-Litovsk, we moved on to the Treaty of Sèvres, and our main point with the Treaty of Sèvres was that we should punish Turkey, and punish them as much as we can, because of the fact that we didn't want any Turkish nationalism to spring back up again and cause some giant war. We also wanted to punish Turkey severely, or at least as much as we could, because of the fact that they had caused many bad things, arguably one of, if not the worst atrocities in the entire war, which is the Armenian genocide and many other smaller atrocities and bad things that they did as well. Which, don't get me wrong, the rest of the Central Powers did too, but arguably, in my opinion, at least in my opinion, it was the Ottomans who did the most horrifying of the war crimes and the bad things. And so we decided to severely punish them by making a united Arab state, basically giving the Arabs all the lands that were promised to them by the British and the French, and a bit more extra, as well as to compensate for a newly created Kurdish and Armenian state, which for some reason we then united into one Kurdish-Armenian union. And on top of that, we also added all the greater Armenian lands and Pontus to the union as well, meaning that this was sort of like a Middle Eastern Austria-Hungary, creating an Armenian-Kurdish-Pontian union state of sorts. Next up, we did discuss a bit about Israel, with me proposing that we give Israel to the League of Nations, and my friend proposing that we give Israel to Britain. But finally I caved in and decided to agree with him, because honestly, after a bit more thinking, it was actually a better idea to give Israel to the British rather than giving them to the League of Nations, because they probably wouldn't do much either way. But while we didn't put Israel under League of Nations administration, we did put the cursed Kurdish Armenian Pontian Union state of sorts under League of Nations supervision, as to prevent as much crime and as much deaths and incidents and similar things as possible. We decided to give Italy and France their own spheres of influence in Turkey, as to make it a bit more fair and also to not make them upset over the British gaining something and them not. And then came the final part of the treaty, which was probably one of the longest arguments we had, and that was with Greece. Basically, what I had demanded with Greece was that Greece basically gets all the lands of the Megali idea. Basically, that would be all of Thrace, Constantinople, Smyrna, and then the lands that connect Smyrna to Constantinople between each other, as well as northern Epirus as well. Well, my friend said that Greece should gain only Thrace and Smyrna. Well, my friend said that the Greek claims should be minimalized and that the Greeks should not get Constantinople or northern Epirus. We argued about this for quite a long time, probably an hour or two, but finally, after a lot of arguing and negotiations, we both agreed to a compromise peace deal. Greece would gain all of her desired lands, but Italy would gain some lands in Albania to lock off the Greeks from the Adriatic Sea as to not make them too powerful. We also gave Serbia some lands in Albania as well and left the rest as an Albanian realm state because I sort of treated Albania as a Central Powers nation, because in these negotiations I sort of treated Albania as like a half Central Powers nation because they actually resisted the Serbian forces and practically tried their best to make the Serbian operation fail, and they almost did succeed in that, which would have been a catastrophe in and of itself. And so that's why I did treat Albania as a sort of half minimal Central Power nation, but not really at the same time. And so that's why we gave all this Albanian land over to their neighbors as a sort of punishment. But after all these territorial changes, we didn't really see any other way that we could punish Turkey, and we moved on to the next treaty, which would be the Treaty of Trianon. Now for the Treaty of Trianon, both of us agreed on the same thing, and that is that we should give a lighter deal to Hungary. This lighter Trianon included Hungary retaining its lands in southern Slovakia, in Carpathia-Ruthenia, in Transylvania, and the land that we bickered around the most, which was the Bachka region, or basically a part of Vojvodina. And the Bachka region is a region where a lot of Serbians but a lot of Hungarians live inside of as well, and we couldn't agree whether to give it to Serbia or to Hungary. I wanted to give the entire region to Hungary, my friend wanted to give the entire region to Serbia as to make a greater Serbian state, but in the end we decided to split up the Bachka region between Hungary and Serbia, roughly following ethnic lines, or at least approximately following ethnic lines. After this, we also decided what kind of nation Yugoslavia should be. We bickered slightly around what kind of nation it should be. I wanted a more federalized system where each nation had its own clear goal and its own clear part in the union, while my friend wanted a more Serbian-led union, at least until the governments could actually form their own legislators and whatnot. And in the end, I decided to agree with him, but only if Yugoslavia would be a French supervised state, and if the French would supervise all the procedures and whatnot, as to not make the Serbs power hungry or abusive towards the other states. And in the end, my friend accepted that deal, and Yugoslavia became a more Serbian central / Serbian-led state, being supervised by the French. After this, we moved on to Bulgaria, which didn't really see any more land changes. We only gave southern Dobruja back to Romania. The German-occupied areas of Romania were of course returned to Romania. Romania gained some Romanian majority lands in Transylvania. All of Banat was given to Yugoslavia. I wasn't really sure whether we should give it or not, but my friend pushed for this, and so I sort of reluctantly accepted the deal. And so now, probably, at least in my opinion, one of the weirdest changes that we made was give Dalmatia to Italy. Now, I wasn't against this. I actually wanted to give some lands to Italy, but a part of me thought that giving all of Dalmatia to Italy didn't really make any sense. And to be honest, the reason my friend gave didn't really make a lot of sense to me, and so I wasn't really sure. On one hand, I wanted to give Italy some lands, but on the other hand, I feared rising tensions between Yugoslavia and Italy permanently or ruining them. And so in the end, I just decided to accept the deal, and all of Dalmatia was given over to Italy, as well as the historical border, including Fiume and all the Slovenian regions and Istra and whatnot. But anyhow, now that we were finally done with Trianon and the Balkans, we moved into the West. We moved into the final part of this whole video, which would be Germany and France, or Western Europe. And here was where we went absolutely wild. We united Czechia and Slovakia into Czechoslovakia. We let Austria have the Sudetenland, giving them small chunks of land that would connect Sudetenland to Austria proper. Then we went and restored Belgium and Luxembourg, and we gave Alsace-Lorraine to France. But then we made Luxembourg be annexed into Belgium, which I mean, I didn't really care for, I did agree with, and the reason my friend gave was also sort of valid as well. We also gave all of Schleswig-Holstein to Denmark, following how historically Denmark gained some free land from Germany. This time they absolutely gained a lot of free land from Germany, probably too much, but still we needed to push that river defensive border. And after that probably came the weirdest part of this entire part of this treaty. And that was we made a separate South German state. We united Austria under the South German state, divided the Sudetenland between Germany and the South German state, and then we gave over a part of the Rhineland to France, practically crippling the Germans in the east and making it almost impossible for the Germans to actually swiftly push through and invade or ever swiftly recover from such an economic disaster ever again, or at least not in a shorter amount of time. We also made it so that France guarantees Czechoslovakia and Belgium, and we also made it so that France supervises not only Yugoslavia, but also the newly created South German state as well. Some other additional changes that we made were that we lowered the German war reparations, we lowered the German war restrictions by a lot, and that was pretty much it. After that, we were done, we discussed for a bit more, laughed a bit more, did a bit more joking around, and that was it. We had created a alternate Versailles that was created by me and my friend. But there was one last thing to do as a send-off to this entire event, and that was give this scenario, or give this entire universe, a perfect name. That's right, the perfect name to this whole scenario, and so they all lived happily ever after. Yep, that was the name. Absolutely majestic name. I could not have given a better name to this whole scenario. Bravo, I gotta compliment myself on that name. That name was absolutely genius. But all jokes aside, what is this video as a whole? Why did I decide to do this video? Why does this video have a sort of special feeling to it, if you know what I mean? Well, it's because this video is the start of a new series on this channel. It's a special video commemorating the end of the summer break and the start of a new school year, but it's also a starter video to a new series that I'm planning to start on this channel, where me and a bunch of other friends of mine sit down, roleplay as different nations, and basically try to roleplay these negotiations. We plan to do a bunch of different negotiations, and I know this has been done on YouTube, especially for World War I and World War II, but we plan to do this for many different treaties. And I hope that you guys are excited for this new series and will stick around for new episodes of this series, which won't be coming out that frequently, but we'll see how frequently they'll be coming out.